I have seen people write books and do seminars on how to make this much money in this short period of time who've never done it. I mentored them, and they would take my material and basically just use my material, repackage it in a way that sounds amazing. How to be a millionaire in this short period of time. They're not a millionaire. They're living in their mom's basement still, 30-some years old, playing video games. And yet they're an influencer online saying they do all these things. You gotta be careful with who's actually helping you do this sort of thing, and if somebody's actually been there and done it, when you dive into those individual particular conversations, you're gonna do better. We're going to dive in right now to growth mindset. This is absolutely a huge part of what's taking place. And we in BVM and the companies that I build always have something called an interruptive culture. Now, if you want to scale your business and grow fast, and these are just like little hacks that I'll throw in throughout this process, an interruptive culture is this. And this isn't even formally what I was going to cover right now at this moment, but I'm telling you, this is a gem. You can walk away with this right away. In most companies, somebody has a question or they need something. So they send something off and they say, hey, can we get some time? And the person that they're interacting with says, how about next Thursday? Okay, fine, I'll send an invite. You know what? I never got your invite, or I got your invite. Sorry, couldn't show up, double booked, whatever. So Thursday goes by and then it's the following Tuesday and they finally have the meeting. Anytime there's a question, generally speaking in business, there's a question behind that question and behind that question, which eventually leads to a customer who needs something. And it may not be a direct straight line like that, but it is somehow related to that. So every single time that you take a question that could be answered pretty quickly or immediately, and you wait for it a week or two, you're a week or two behind your competitors who answer that question right away. So we have an interruptive culture, which means that I would sometimes, as the CEO or even as the executive chairman, I'll be in with the CEO, with the CFO, with general counsel, okay? And we'll be sitting there, and a new employee that's been around for 6 weeks will walk in the middle of us talking and say, I got a question for you. And we'll answer for it. And if the door's open, it's open for that reason. Why? Because there's questions that they need answered that need answered. And if we get that done fast, everything moves quickly. When people come to BVM, they always say the same thing themselves. They say, I've never seen an organization move this fast. You move unbelievably fast. And that gets you ahead. Every single decision that needs to be made. I mean, if you're making one great decision a day and your competitors are making 7 great decisions a day, they're not going to just be 7 times ahead of you. They're going to be exponentially ahead of you, because those start to multiply almost like AI and auto-generated learning. I mean, these are things that start to actually happen. So it's very, very important for you to do that. Anyway, so we have an interruptive culture here. If you want to ask a question, I always do reserve the right to say, wait, I've got a momentum going here, and I'm not going to be able to be clear if we answer it now, but ask it, and Nico will use his own discretion to interrupt, and we can answer it. One of the reasons that's important is because it might be a quick, important question you have directly related to the thing that I just said. Well, how about that for taking up on it right away? Can people hear you?
Yeah.
And can we bring them up on the screen when they ask the question?
We can, if you want to.
If they want to, if otherwise they can just ask it either way.
Okay. Well, let me ask this, and then if Tram, if you have any follow-up questions, we can go ahead and get you on the screen here, and we can have a little bit of interaction with you.
All right.
But Tram asks, Tram Win, I'm wondering why Dave decided to start leading giants when there is so much competition. Good point. What's the leading giants value proposition?
Oh, thank you, Tram, for asking. By the way, that almost sounds like a setup question, because what a tremendous opportunity to answer it. But it is not. Tram, thank you for asking the question. Yeah, there's a lot of competition, and I know many people that are in this. I know some of my competitors, and some of them are fantastic, absolutely great. So when you meet somebody like an Alex Hermosi, I mean, this guy has built the businesses. He has good advice. There are a lot of people like that out there. The Tony Robbinses. Frankly speaking, when you're working with somebody like me, you're going to pick certain people that you kind of vibe with. And if you vibe with those people and they can answer the questions that you want, I actually would just say, go for it. I don't need to work here. I don't need any more money. I'm doing this because I want to help people. And frankly speaking, if you said, I'm being helped by these people, they're fantastic, they're answering all my questions, I'm becoming who I want to be when I do what I do, I would say, go for it. Keep doing that. Keep your life simple. I am different in what I present, though. And the difference is that I truly believe that it's way more about who you become when you do what you do than what it is you do. Because you walk away with that forever and you never regret it. And there are a lot of people that teach just techniques that don't form the person. And that usually leaves the person a little vulnerable when they move on to the next thing. But if you become that strong man or woman on the inside and the outside in a full context, you're going to do so much better as you move forward. So I believe that there are some insights that you're going to hear. Generally, the feedback that others provide for me when it comes to this sort of thing, and I'm a little bit like, really, because it seems maybe this is pretty simple material, but they say that it runs a little bit deeper. So there might be something there on forming who you are. I have seen people write books and do seminars on how to make this much money in this short period of time who've never done it. And I mentored them, and they would take my material and basically just use my material, repackage it in a way that sounds amazing. How to be a millionaire in this short period of time. They're not a millionaire. They're living in their mom's basement still, 30-some years old, playing video games. And yet they're an influencer online saying they do all these things. But you got to be careful with who's actually helping you do this sort of thing. And if somebody's actually been there and done it, when you dive into those individual particular conversations, you're going to do better. Now, by the way, there's limits to what we're doing here today, because I had the Q&A that you brought in, and I'm half tempted to do something, Nico. I'm half tempted, by the way, to refund the money that anybody has for the last hour of Q&A, and then invite everybody in for free. If we keep getting good questions, I think I might just do that. And the reason for it is because there's a lot of material here. In order for this material to really come to life, knowing exactly what your particular question is makes it easier. Okay, let's get into growth mindset a little bit more. And thank you for your question, Tram. All right. In growth mindset, you have to accept the understanding and the idea that you need to become an expert in what you do. This has to be done in a way, though, and by the way, the growth mindset and the virtue growth mindset, they're very related, and I'm going to pop back and forth behind the two of them. And again, these are not just fire up things. There's actual practical strategies, like how to ask questions, what specific questions you need to ask when you're going to grow a business about the business in order to grow it. Okay. And how to make decisions. So these things aren't just like, oh, virtues, be nice. And they're not just like mindset, have a positive attitude. They're actual strategic ideas. Expertise itself is a very big part of this. Why? Because you need to get to the point where you're making intuitive decisions. What is an intuitive decision? When you look at people who operate at the highest level in athletics, they don't stop and say, think, should I pass the ball here? They just do it. They unconsciously do it. I remember in martial arts training, when I was I did it for 20 some years, but when I first started, I said to a black belt, I said, what's your fighting stance? And I was all intrigued and interested. And he said, it's whatever one I'm in. And I said, what do you mean? And he goes, if I'm sitting down drinking coffee or I'm standing up, that's my fighting stance. When you become a black belt, you have to know how to adapt to every single circumstance instantaneously in order to disarm an enemy or combat. I thought, well, that's fascinating. It has to be that fast. I said, well, what would you do if you were sitting right here and somebody came at you? He goes, I wouldn't be able to tell you until I'm done. I said, what do you mean? Now, if you talk to people that have never been like in a fight, I don't know, I'm talking about fighting here, but as a young man, I can remember this, before I knew how to, I was like, you know what? If somebody came at me, I know exactly what I'd do. Well, it never works out that way. Mike Tyson said, everyone has a plan until they're hit in the face. But the reason that the black belt said, I would tell you afterwards, is because if somebody attacked him, he would instinctively use behaviors that he has developed an expertise for at an unconscious level, and then he would actually replay it afterwards. When you look at people at all sorts of high level of training, they'll tell you the same sorts of things. Even people like EMTs, if they're in an intense circumstance, or people on the battlefield, but also people in business. But you see, the medical field is fascinating. A brand new doctor will be like, I'm going to run tests. I'm going to run tests. Well, experienced doctors do that too, because they are smart enough to know they might be wrong. But an experienced doctor has been doing it for 40 years, will be next to a brand new, resident, and somebody walk in and they're like, run these 3 tests, because you can just look at them and over the years, understand what's taking place. In leadership, it's the same way. You can sit with somebody and go, I know what kind of person that is. And I know that I don't trust them. I know that this person is probably just big hat, no cattle. They know how to talk, but they don't get things done. This person is really quiet. but might be effective. This person is loud and gregarious and energetic, but sincere, and I can tell they're hardworking. Now, you can't always be right about these things. You have to allow for your intuition to be corrected by what is true, because following what is true is the greatest sign of strength in a person, okay? But it's a big mistake to not make a judgment or an assessment. Some people go, oh, judging, you can't judge. Listen, you wouldn't be on this call right now if you didn't judge. You wouldn't be dressed right now if you didn't judge. What am I going to wear? You wouldn't have had breakfast. You didn't make a judgment about what to eat. We have to make judgments all day long. There's a big difference between making a judgment and being judgmental, right? So you make a judgment, but you remain open-minded about that. You can't pick friends, by the way. You can't pick colleagues. You can't decide to buy a product from somebody without making a judgment about who is this that I'm talking about. And the more you make those judgments, and the more you actually see what judgment you're making come true or not true, the more you are able to now track how often you are correct and continue to relearn until you get there at the highest level. This would happen for firefighters. It happens for pilots. Certainly when I went through pilot training, there have been a couple of different times where you have what could have led to an emergency take place, but through your basic training, you handle the circumstance and you land the plane safely. Okay. By the way, that happens a little bit more than people would actually want to know.